Great. Hi everyone, I'm Kate Hahn. I'm a senior writer with TV Guide Magazine and TV Insider, and I am so thrilled to be here today for Behind the Stream, the Continental Interactive Junket. I am a huge fan of this franchise, and I have a feeling that you are too, right? Before we immerse you in these wonderful behind-the-scenes elements of the show, I want you to hear from the executive producers. So let's give a huge welcome to them. First, we have executive producer and director Albert Hughes. Okay, you made it. Next, we have executive producer Erica Lee. And executive producer Basil Iwanyk. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
So Albert, you broke onto the scene, everybody knows, 30 years ago with Menace to Society. And have produced and directed and written so many projects. But what aspects of the John Wick films were used as inspiration for this particular series?
I think it was like checking out and escaping and having fun, and what they established so wonderfully well with the, well, not 4 films, but when we made this, there were only 3 films. And we were all getting out of COVID. And when we first talked, I was saying to myself, like, I just don't want to do social issues or generational trauma anymore, inner city violence. I'll do violence. And I said, oh my God, this is perfect. I want to have fun. Because they look like they're having fun when they make those. I know it's stressful too, but, and we did it, and it was fun. And there wasn't that thing in my head, that big block. It was pure escapism. I also thought I wanted that for the audience. If I'm having fun, I think the audience will have fun too.
It has a lot of fun, and it also has all the thrills of the films, for sure. Well, Basil and Erica, the franchise has a rabid fan base. What are you most excited about for fans of the films to discover in this prequel? I mean, Erica, in the featurette, you mentioned that you can answer questions that you haven't in the film series.
Yeah, I mean, in the movies we have such limited amounts of time to kind of delve into the characters in the world, and specifically the Continental, which itself has become a character in the movies and so special, and everyone wants to know more about it. Who works there? How does it work? What's the inner lives of the assassins? So I think it's been fun for us to kind of take a deep dive into that, and the show really does that.
It really does. Well, Albert, we have Winston and Sharon, who we all know from the Wick films. They're beloved. How do you find the right actors for that? We've talked about casting Ayomide as Sharon. Can you talk about where you found him and how that played out?
He was interesting because we did this big search, as you usually do with a film, and we had this one guy that was really close. He came in 3 times, and then the casting woman from London said, "Oh, I have this last person that might be, but he's in Wells and drama school right now, this last year of drama school, and he's never been on camera." And they show us his tape, and we're like, "Oh my God!" He's of Nigerian descent. His parents are from Nigeria. They live in London. So he also knows that accent in his household, but he's also talented. So we yanked him out of his last year, and his first scene was with Mel Gibson. So, and Colin, actually Basil was a big champion of Colin. I got to give him credit for that, because I saw him and I'm like, oh, he has the movie star looks, but I didn't see what he saw until he showed up. And he's a very smart actor. He also has these like old throwback movie star looks, you know? He looks similar to Ian McShane in his younger years. But he's deeply, deeply talented, and he's constantly thinking, even when he's not doing dialogue, which is important, I think.
Right, you had also mentioned when we spoke earlier that Sharon, you wanted the actor to look like Lance Reddick.
Yeah, I think it's important that they both are similar in appearance, because I think it would throw the audience if they weren't. But that's a superficial thing. Mm-hmm. And then you have to get to talent, You need the talent. And they both are talented.
Well, yeah, they certainly are. Well, Basil, tell us about Colin and why you advocated for him.
I think, for me, what strikes me about Ian McShane is his eyes. Those eyes are incredible. I mean, even from Sexy Beast, which I don't know if you guys ever saw, he doesn't even talk in that movie, but he's terrifying, and his eyes could vacillate between like charming and there's a twinkle in his eye and fun, and then on a moment's notice could be lethal and scary. And Colin was the one actor who I felt had Ian's eyes, where you looked at Colin's eyes and thought, okay, that is somebody who will grow into that character of someone who will charm somebody before he shivs them. And when he, when Ian and Ian's character try to assures the audience that he's on John Wick's side, you want to believe him because you just see it in his face. And I think that's what Colin had. And it just started with the eyes, really.
Right. Well, Basil and Erica, since you worked on all the films, do you have any fun facts or stories that you want to share from things that have happened over the years?
I think one that comes to mind from John Wick 1 is that everyone loves the dog, Daisy. That dog was actually a male dog named Andy, and we had to VFX the penis out.
Done that on one film too. $50,000 worth of penis removal.
I mean, on the dog, it shows you, by the way, where our mindset was about John Wick 1. The pit bull at the end of the movie, when the pit bull comes out, I went to Chad, and I'm like, Chad, I thought you hated pit bulls. I hate pit bulls too. Why the fuck is there a pit bull? And he's like, it's Dave Leitch's choice, and besides, we're never going to come back here again, so who cares? And now, every time this pit bull shows up on John Wick 2, 3, and 4, Chad is just like, God damn, Dave Leitch, we're stuck with this pit bull. But it just shows you that when we made that first movie, we had no plans for anything else, let alone a TV show and a spin-off and everything else.
Right, I mean, there's so much coming. Well, Albert, and the Continental introduces this brand new ensemble, all these new characters and assassins, and I want to talk about them, but I want to start with Mel Gibson's character, Cormac. That's probably, I don't know what that feedback is, but it's a ghost. It's the ghost of the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel.
There is supposed to be a ghost in Hollywood Roosevelt. It's supposed to be one of the most haunted hotels in Hollywood.
I mean, I'm standing here.
Well, do they have an Instagram account that we should all follow? Okay, so tell me about Cormac and that character.
Well, I thought it was already in the script. He's kind of a psychopath, a little shabby on the edges. His organizational skills are not what Winston's are later in the Wick film series. And he was influenced by some names that we'll go and mention that are in popular culture and politics. And that was fun to play with because it's a person who doesn't have a moral compass and doesn't really have codes or moral codes or rules, which is what they established so well in the films. Even these killers, there's honor among them. There's no honor with this guy. So you almost want the audience to root for him to be removed and the new regime to come in and bring order and class and sophistication to the hotel.
And did you push any of those scenes to make him seem even more unlikable, or was it all on the page already?
It was on the page, but Mel is interesting because if you look at Lethal Weapon, there's these zingers that he does. He plays with words. That's him. And he was very playful. The showrunner and writer Kirk Ward, they got together and started getting very playful. Then I sometimes throw lines at actors if I see their talent and I think, oh, this might sound funny, I'll do it. Or another actor will throw another line. It starts to be this kind of dance. And I think the strange thing about shooting the first episode, I didn't realize that Mel had never seen a John Wick film. He only seen half of 3. And so I said, Mel, because he does everything in this very subtle, incremental way, and we've seen all these wild, big performances from him. So I was expecting, like what they tell me, like Wick accepts so much wild stuff. I said, you can start chewing up the scenery. He's like, really? I can? I said, yeah, please start going big. And if you see the series, he gradually gets to this very unhinged, psychotic place because I think he got more comfortable.
Right. Well, and talk about going big, there are so many kick-ass female characters. Could you talk about them? There are 3. I mean, there's KD, who's the detective. She's incredible. Tell us a little bit about her.
There's something traumatic that happened in her past that's slowly revealed throughout all 3 shows. But if you pay close attention, you might figure it out early, which is the way they wrote the scripts. And she's kind of on a singular mission of revenge. we don't know yet what it is. It kind of gets revealed in 2, really revealed in 3. And she's integral to the heart of the story, with the crux of the catalyst for everything to jump off. Like John Wick, the films is the puppy. Her story involves Winston and Franklin, and her seeking justice and revenge.
Okay. We also have Nhung who plays Yen, and she has some incredible scenes. You don't want to run into her in a dark alley if you're not on her side. So tell us about her and the casting of that actress.
Well, we thought it would be difficult. Like, you have to find a Vietnamese actress who knows how to fight, or has to be trainable at least, right? So there's this wonderful audition that came in with Kate in a close-up with cicadas in the background in the jungle. It seemed like she was like in the bush of Vietnam, but she looked beautiful. And then she started crying doing this performance. Like, oh my God, she's great. And they go, wait, she has a stunt reel. I said, she has a stunt reel. They show this really crazy stunt reel. I'm like, she's a unicorn. We have to get her. There's no way we're finding anybody else. There's no way we're going to find it. So it was the first time I think she even left Vietnam. We had to get special paperwork and jump through all these kind of, I don't know, embassy loops and, visas, yeah.
And
they,
one we went, that we cast her, that was it.
Yeah, she was the only one. And during Christmas, they wouldn't allow her to go home because they were afraid that the Vietnamese government or the Hungarian government wouldn't allow her back. So, but she was fantastic. So.
She was great. And then we also have Jessica, who owns the dojo. She plays a character named Lou. Tell us about her. She's fascinating too.
Well, her code is what she thought her father taught her. She doesn't want to deal with guns. And slowly you start to find out her father is not what she thinks he is, And her brother is a gun runner, so that's very difficult. He's running guns beneath the dojo that she's running up top. And she's wonderful at what she did in the role because, most probably don't know she's British with a thick British accent. And she had to learn kind of this quasi-New York accent. And I didn't fully appreciate it, until the cut settled. And I go, oh my God, she really did a good job in that accent, because she's fooling me.
Yeah, she fooled all of us there. Basil and Erica, I want to talk about another aspect of this series that kind of relates to the films. There are a lot of Easter eggs in there. Could you kind of tee them up a little bit and tell people what to look out for?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of locations that we use in the movies that you'll see sort of like the first view of in the series. Where the gold coins come from is a big one that I think you'll see the genesis of that.
John Wick's car, which I think is probably the best Easter egg.
Yeah.
The irony is that the whole show is kind of based on an Easter egg from the first movie, which I don't even remember. Apparently, Winston says, I've been a member of this institution, or I've been running this place for 35 years. And that was the premise of the writers coming in saying, you know that line in John Wick? And we're like, we don't remember that line. But there's a line in John Wick, and that's where we're going to start. So, if you look deeply, I actually was rewatching those shows like 2 weeks ago, and I found one. I mean, the rooftop where Maisie's talking to Winston is the same rooftop of the Bowery King, which I only figured out like 2 weeks ago because I'm an idiot. But once I figured it out, it was really exciting, even for a schmuck like me who's familiar with it. I'm like, oh my God, it's the exact same rooftop. The irony of that rooftop is there's been so much construction in Brooklyn that we can never even shoot that rooftop anymore practically. So we had to, shoot it in Budapest. But it's the world around Brooklyn is. Most of the I won't say most, but a good number of the places that we established in John Wick 1, we can't go back to because Brooklyn's gotten so fancy in the last decade.
Yeah, it would be difficult to do the show even in New York. Like, it was fantastic to shoot in New York, but Budapest didn't give us any more challenges than we would have had in New York in some ways, But there's also the other Easter eggs of there's a Marilyn Monroe poster in episode 1, and the title of the film is Be Seeing You, which is a line from, I think, 2? John Wick 2. There's one in the 3rd episode, a license plate of the adjudicator is actually an abbreviated line from the adjudicator in film 3. There's 70s nods to other movies, I think we talked about last week. Yen in the taxi in the 1st episode is the exact replica of Travis Bickle's in Taxi Driver. The second episode, there's a Starsky and Hutch car, you know, the red one with the Nike swoosh, white. And then the third episode, there's the Warriors from the movie The Warriors, a hearse, a black hearse with spray painting. But there's also a ton of other from the film series. I keep pointing at you guys when I said, 'cause I didn't work in those films.
Well, it's funny you talk about the Warriors because Jimmy, the character of Jimmy, that's in the first night, we cast that actor in John Wick 1 because he was in the Warriors.
Tom
Warriors.
Stasky.
Yeah, no, not Tom Stasky.
Oh.
Whatever his name was. No, he was the cop.
Yeah.
The guy who played Jimmy was in the Warriors, and that's one of the touchstone movies that we watched going into John Wick
And
1.
48 Hours, that same guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So lots of references to your favorite films and films that have helped shape who you are as filmmakers, definitely. The other thing the John Wick franchise is really known for, Albert, is these unique, stylized fighting scenes. I don't think we see anything like that in any other film. How did you approach creating these epic fights for this series?
Well, it starts with like, don't compete with Chad because he's the best that does it, and use his company, and use his producers, and they were the ones that were on the search for the perfect guy. Larnell Stowell, our action and fight coordinator, and I'm also a big believer in not overstaying your welcome and being into action fatigue. They really get away with it because they have a singular character in John Wick and a singular personality in Keanu Reeves. They also get away with it because there's no one like Chad. Like the way he does that, he's one of a kind. We have the advantage and disadvantage of we have to tell a longer story and introduce more characters. So I call it now the Kobe V theory of action. You have to marbleize the action through the story, and we can't get away with what a 2-hour movie gets away with, which is just a non-stop 30-minute or 25-minute or 10-minute set piece. Nor would I want to. I come from the school of loving Sergio Leone films where it's all about the tension and the build-up and a quick release of violence, right? So I had to have the happy medium of learning from what Chad does and learning from what Sergio does and kind of finding that new balance, not a shoe.
Yeah, and I think we applied the same philosophy that we did on the first two John Wick movies when we didn't have that much money relative to things, which is you're never going to compete with like Fast and Furious, you know, a car chase. There's no chance. So we always said, don't make it bigger, make it cooler. And you realize when you kind of break down, like scientifically, some of the action sequences in really John Wick 1, 2, and 3, 4 goes, it's insane. And the TV show, you go, God, it's not a big sequence, it's a cool sequence. You know, it's just different, it's interesting. The challenges, the locations. So in some ways, of all the action franchises in Hollywood, it was the most applicable for the relative budget constrictions of television because we didn't need to blow up a city block and it wasn't about tanks or planes. You know, it was two people in a phone booth fighting, which is awesome. And you can't get any smaller. It's literally, that's part of the joy of the fight, but it's not bigger, it's just cooler, which is what we always said on the films and the TV show.
Yeah, we also use a lot of small objects to kill people or hurt people. So I think pencils, books, hammers. So we infuse some of that, like in the yen fight with the iron, and so I think specificity and choreographing to its location.
That's what they specialize in. So Chad Stahelski and David Leitch both own a stunt company called 8711, which is like a think tank of people that do these creative designs. And what they specialize in is finding an environment, or not, they use the environment they're given, I should say. So if it was this environment, they would use this on your head, the table, the chairs, and they're very, very creative just with how they handle action. But also to say that our show was a hybrid between features and TV. We weren't small budgeted at all, but we weren't like given extravagant budget either. Each episode probably was similar to the first John Wick film, I would say. Like the limitations of the
but
show.
But you remember, you had to create New York and Budapest, and put aside what the buildings are. It's the cars, the trash, the wardrobe, signage. Stuff's expensive. In the first John Wick, it was, I think we worked on a stage for 4 days just to satisfy New York tax credit. Everything else was location.
Cheap. Was it in Jersey? Was any of them in Jersey?
No, I wish, but it was yeah, we have a Jersey license plate, but it's
I did see a Peter Luger sign in the background of one scene with John Wick. I'm like, whoa. So you guys are in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of Brooklyn.
Well, talk a little bit more about that, creating that 70s look of the show. You mentioned the trash. I did not know trash was so expensive.
Period trash.
Yeah, it's well, that's one of the underappreciated or one of the things that actually haunts producers is you think about, okay, how do you build the buildings and all that, but the dressing of the radio, the dresser, the seat, the garbage can, that stuff becomes so expensive, and it usually doesn't exist in Central or Continental Europe. So you got to build it or bring it in, and
the cars, the taxis.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's a kind of a messed up, dirty New York where there's shit everywhere, and so that stuff is really hard. And the thing about period is there's such a challenge to it, because if there's one thing that's out of whack, you're completely taken out of the period. Smallest thing, it could be somebody's wearing an outfit in the background where you're like, hold on a second, that does not look right. Or that car, and so the attention to detail that most audience members don't even really care about is overwhelming. And that challenge, I mean, I have to say, of all the things that I'm proud of in the show is challenging someone, where do we shoot? And I guarantee you Budapest is in the top 10 of the answers. And that's just an incredible testament to our production designer and Albert and our set dresser and costume and hair, everything. It's just all those little decisions to not only shoot it in New York, shoot Budapest for New York, but 70s New York in Budapest.
But I also have to say that they allowed for latitude in a way with what they established in the film series, which is even John Wick has an impressionistic take in New York. It's not really New York, but you still have to adhere to certain things for people to buy into the world. So the show is an impressionistic take on some random year in 1970s New York, where we grab the sanitation strike and grab various things that we all love from our movies from the past. But that's what's so fun about the world. Like, you can actually get away with like what they do in the films. Like the mailroom attendants, they're using analog equipment in the modern, like, it's so you can borrow from different eras basically, and it fits within the world.
The music too really grounds us in, but it's across all genres. I mean, you have everything from the Stooges to Yes to funk and blues. Okay,
my list.
You were prepared.
Black Sabbath, Chicago, James Brown, Supertramp, The Stooges, Boney M, Hart, Isley Brothers, Harry Nilsson, Tom Waits, there's others, but I'm excited about these.
So tell me how you landed. I mean, it really plays a role in the series. There's a narrative aspect. There's that chicken strut scene where they're taking Colin in, and the music really reflects what's happening in the scene. So talk about that a little bit.
I was like, you grow up watching your favorite movies. Like Scorsese does really good with needle drops. Some of his movies, he has no score. I think Goodfellas may have no score. It's just needle drops. It's also like, I saw it at the Chinese theater yesterday, and I go, did I go too far with this? Because I love these tracks, but I always wanted the tracks to be another character for the movie, because I don't have the advantage of Keanu Reeves. That was my biggest insecurity. It was like, he's a singular guy and a singular character. So what else can I do? We have these fantastic actors and crew, but there has to be something that people can also be nostalgic about. Sometimes a song will remind you of a smell, of a cologne of an aunt you knew, or an uncle. Or food that was cooked in 1975. So it triggers memories. And for the younger generation, they're kind of poppy, so it's good for them, it's familiar. And then you try to introduce also more obscure B-side tracks, because I don't like films or TV shows that use too much pop. It's too easy. And then you get into irony, what can be ironic, what can help not only, there's an anomaly with the Wick films. They have a large female fan base, which is great, okay? And I think it speaks to Keanu, and I think it speaks to how they've cast the other powerful female roles that are interesting. But also, how do we make it digestible? I don't have a dead puppy. I don't have Keanu. So how can I make women not turn away? And that's consciously in my mind. And they know that I'm winking and nodding in a way to say, have fun. This is not, we're not curing cancer here.
Right. Well, you also mentioned to me when we talked before about
very feminist mom, and that comes out in the show. Can you talk about her influence on creating some of these kick-ass female characters?
Well, I think we talked about it's like subconscious at first because she beat it into us. Like we were on ERA and now marches and watching speeches and being forced to watch Gandhi and shit like that. Like, you know, she was very socially aware, especially with women's issues. And I noticed that there was a thread in all the stuff my brother and I had done, whether they just were in there. And the script was already written, but I counted 7 to 10 powerfully different women. They're on a grayscale of bad, really, right? Everybody's bad in John Wick world. But there's a strange thing that goes on towards episode 3 that you would think your hero is supposed to clean up a mess, and it's all the women that go in and clean up and kick ass, you know. And I didn't realize it all that it's settled, but I was proud of what they had already established with the writers before I came on. Because when I first read the script, I not only saw that at first glance, I also noticed that it was multicultural, but not in a cynical Hollywood kind of paint by the numbers corporate way. Like, well, we gotta get the Mexican in, we gotta get the Asian in. It didn't feel like that. Also because it's New York, and New York is one of the few cities in the whole world where you can put all those cultures together, all those different types of food and music. And I was a little worried about, you got ZZ Top and then Isley Brothers. Is this gonna work? Or, you know, James Brown and Iggy Pop? But because I think the setting lends itself to that, it worked.
Well, it certainly does, and it's really been lovely speaking with you three. Albert, Erica, and Basil, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone here for coming to us. So enjoy being wrapped up in this immersive world. You're going to hear from so many fascinating people today. And remember to tune in to night 1 of the 3-part series on Friday, September 22nd, only on Peacock. Can we get another huge round for these